Scrolls fans, Smogan here, casting another set of games for the King of the Beta tournament. This matchup will be between Magpieman on the left with first turn advantage and PewQ on the right. Two very, very, very strong players, and I'm very excited to see how this match unfolds. Remember, this is a best of 3 matchup in a triple deck format. For those that didn't catch the round 1 action between Magpieman and Blinky and some of the other matches, that means that each player has submitted 3 total decks to this tournament. They will each start with one. Magpieman has elected to start with his mono energy range build that was successful against Blinky, went 1-1 against Blinky. And when and if a player loses with one of their decks, they must switch to one of their other 2 submitted decks, whereas the winner has to stick with their deck until it loses. So both players will have a difficult choice to decide what deck to start with and then what deck they want to switch to try to counter their opponent's strategy. Magpieman, we've already reviewed this deck a little bit, so I won't spend a lot of time here, but do note the singletons, do note the bombard plays, do note only 2 copies of Thunder Surge, only 2 copies of Violent Dispersal, and quite a few Boom Reavers as well. So this is a very interesting build. I'm really excited to see it in action again against PewQ. And speaking of PewQ, he is playing more of a mid-range, late-game decay build. Notice that it does not have rippers. It does not have quite as much going on in the early game, instead having a full set of Cursed Presence. This scroll has really, made its presence felt in decay decks lately. It was really weak before the most recent change, but just adding Curse 4 onto something is really quite powerful, especially when you're going to follow it up with an Infectious Blight, or the Brain Lice, or, my favorite, dropping a Baleful Witch and killing everything on the board. Really cool combination there. Otherwise, this decay build is for the most part relatively standard. Really strong stuff in the mid range with the Rot Eaters and the Harvesters and the Blight Bearers and the Curse Mongers. A little bit of late game power with the extremely strong Halls of Lhasa. A couple of copies of the Witch Doctor, 2 Necrogeddons to go with a pair of Watchers, and then the singleton Rattlehim. I think that's really, really interesting that he's got 1 copy of Rattlehim. We'll see if it comes up at the right time. At worst, it cycles and draws him a Halls of Lhasa, so it's not a bad choice at all, sort of as the 3rd Halls in his deck. So let's get straight to it. Magpieman versus PewQ game 1 action in the 2nd round of this tournament. Magpieman starts with just a sacrifice for energy. Turn goes over to PewQ. Not a lot going on in his deck early on, so he'll just sacrifice up as well. Magpieman needs to think about how he can get early pressure on before PewQ can get his late game card advantage machine running. He does have a great start here with a Hired Smuggler into Boom Reaver or into Oculus Cannon, and then Bombard in hand is always nice to have. So that Hired Smuggler comes down right in the middle, and PewQ will have to find an answer to that. As we saw in the first round action, Hired Smuggler was able to draw in the first game for him against Blinky. Hired Smuggler drew like 5 scrolls over the course of the game. Really, really turned the tide. PewQ, however, has a much better answer than Blinky did. He's got that Soul Steal on round 3, the absolute perfect response, right before the Hired Smuggler is ready to attack. Boom Reaver comes down behind the Hired Smuggler, and the turn goes over to PewQ. Let's see, he will be using that Soul Steal almost certainly, and then he's even got a 4 and a 5 and a 6. He's got a very strong hand as well, and the Mire Shambler spawns up top and moves 1 row up as well. The Boom Reaver might move to try to chase it down a little bit. Thunder Surge is sacrificed, Tempest Reaver played in the middle, and no, Magpieman content to let the Mire Shambler shamble up there and maintain control of the center of the board. PewQ sacrifices his Bloodline Taint, he sacrifices up to 4 resources and drops a Blight Bear down on the bottom, out of reach of the Boom Reaver. Burn is ready to go, and it is used on that Mire Shambler, so card advantage neutral on that play, since for PewQ that was a free scroll, and 3 damage done to the middle idol. PewQ goes up to his 5-drop Oblivion Seeker, ready to move to the middle. Totally cool losing either of these units, because he benefits from their death for the most part. Tempest Reaver could take out that Oblivion Seeker, but that would cost Magpieman quite a bit of tempo. He wouldn't be able to build up his board and would just draw PewQ some scrolls. So intelligently, he moves up to the top, deals a little bit of idle damage, and plays a Storm Runner in the middle rank 2nd row. PewQ finds that first cursed presence. Now is not the time for it, though. It goes, and it is in fact time for the Halls of Lhasa. Extraordinarily powerful scroll, especially if your opponent is not running lingering stuff. And you know what? If we take a look back at Magpieman's deck, we see he is in fact not running any anti-lingering, so he has no way to interact with that Halls of Lhasa. That's just going to be 3 free scrolls for PewQ over the next few turns. Gravelock Elder comes down, and will the Boom Reaver kill the Blightbearer? No, just deals some idle damage, and Magpieman putting the pressure on. We see that first draw here. So in this situation, if I'm playing PewQ's deck, and I do play a deck similar to this pretty frequently, I like to grab that Halls whenever you can, if it's in the graveyard, so that you can start looping it and keep that card advantage engine going. The downside to that, of course, is then you're not going to have access to these other powerful scrolls. Something that we can also watch for later in the game, an interesting interaction, is if you have a Necrogeddon and you cast it with the Halls in play, you can then grab that Necrogeddon again next turn and start necroing every single turn. There aren't very many decks that can keep up with that much instant attacking off of all those husks. Let's see how PewQ plays this. He what does he grab here? Grab that Cursemonger, so he's going for more of a board presence, or actually he goes ahead and sacrifices it. Are we going to see a Necrogeddon play here? We just might. And indeed we do, so that's going to poison all of Magpieman's stuff. Draws 2 scrolls off the Oblivion Seeker. A couple of husks are going to come out, and let's see where he moves them to deal some damage. Splits them to deal 3 idle damage and 3 to the Gravelock Elder, so the Storm Runner will only be able to hit 1. And it looks like he's going to take out that middle one. Has an Automaton Forge, plays that out on the 4th row, and a Gun Auto behind. Excellent, excellent. Okay, one husk will bite the dust, and the other one is threatened by several units. Necrogeddon in the graveyard. PewQ could grab it if he wants it. Could grab that Oblivion Seeker too. I'm interested to see. He does choose the Oblivion Seeker. I agree with that play. Watcher, Infectious Blight, Languid, Bloodline Taint. Lots of options here. We see that Bloodline Taint come down. It's going to curse all of the humans. 3 of them are already poisoned. They are all going to fall on the beginning of Magpieman's turn. Boom, boom, boom. Gone. Tons of value on that play there. Burn comes and finds its favorite target, the Ilmire Rot Eater, and Hired Smuggler comes down behind the Gravelock Elder, who immediately murders the husk. Sorry, Geraloth, I'll have to answer that question here in a moment. Ilmire Tribesman, oh, that was the Sift mechanic off the, and he finds the Bloodline Taint again off the Halls, so that will be in the bag for future plays. Oblivion Seeker comes down in the middle, still has resources for a Rot Eater or a Languid, chooses the Rot Eater, and plays it down behind the Oblivion Seeker. Strong center position there. Magpieman looking for an answer to all of this card advantage. Has some decent mid-range stuff here. Boom Reaver comes down behind. And I do like the addition of Boom Reaver in this deck. I'll talk about the Bombard in a moment. Kind of takes that Scattergunner role, or just that solid 3-drop role, and it has a little bit more staying power. It can't be soul stealed quite as easily, but that Bombard does come down. Let's see what Magpieman wants to do with it. His options are to well, he can't kill this Rot Eater with the way things were positioned, unfortunately. With a different placement on the Boom Reaver, he could have killed the Rot Eater. He would have moved the Gun Auto up, played the Boom Reaver in the middle, and the Gravelock Elder up. Would have cleared PewQ's board, drawn him some scrolls, of course, but it looks like instead Magpieman wants to put the pressure on the idols. He's going to take out the 2nd row idol, deal some damage up here, and draw a scroll off the Hired Smuggler. So the idol damage comes in, 1 idol does fall, and a little bit done to the other idols as well. PewQ's Halls have expired. And the other one's already in the grave, so we're not going to see Hall's action coming until a deck cycle. Languid makes the Hired Smuggler rather useless. Languid makes the Gun Automaton rather useless. And what else is he going to do here? Still has 4 resources to play around with. Could just see another Rot Eater come out. And the Oblivion Seeker will be taking down the Gravelock Elder. So note that 3 damage from the Husk earlier ends up paying off, and the Elder is able to be destroyed. Storm Runner in hand along with a Machinated Overdrive as well. That's a really strong combo with these Forges. Let's see if that's what Magpieman wants to do next turn. Another Storm Runner played out. That's a lot of damage on the board. Doesn't have the Bombard in hand, but if he can find one, or if PewQ just can't remove these units, that's going to be pretty significant. Though Bloodline Taint Baleful Witch has something to say about that. Curses all the humans, and then Infectious Blight comes down. That'll take down the Boom Reaver and immediately transfer Rot Eater will take out a gun automaton. Strong play by PewQ. It goes to the Stormrunner. Perhaps unfortunate for Magpieman, would have rather that jump to the Hired Smuggler. Gravelock Elder comes down behind the Forge, behind the Stormrunner, and positions his units defensively, but can't deal any damage this turn. Everything's languided. PewQ has a Rot Eater and an Oblivion Seeker attacking. Witch Doctor in hand, goes up to 9 resources on round 12 and still has those 4 cards in hand and 3 on the board. That's the power of the halls. When you can be on that high of a resource count and still have a populated hand, that all comes from that Halls of Umlasa play. If players do not start playing Lingering Removal, Decay decks are just going to continue to dominate with that scroll. And then we see the Witch Doctor come down and a Baleful Witch down behind as well. That's going to trigger some curse damage and take out the Forge and the Stormrunner off the Infectious Blight. It jumps, unluckily for Magpieman, to the Gravelock Elder. Another Elder in hand, though. Magpie pays 3 energy to pump out a gun auto, plays a Stormrunner behind, and pops the gun auto in front of the blighted Gravelock Elder. PewQ still has removal in hand, finds Oblivion Seeker and Blightbearer. So many value scrolls in this deck. Everything has a bonus effect of some sort, whether it be poison or more draw, cantripping off of languids, Infectious Blight traveling around the board. Lots of value all over the place. Bloodline Tank curses that Stormrunner, so it will die immediately anyway, not willing to risk a Bombard Machinated play. Desperation, though, that will get that Gravelock Elder up to 12. This is a critical play. Critical play here. What this play shows us is that Magpieman has accepted that he is not going to be able to break through the card advantage and value of all of PewQ's Decay scrolls. Instead, he's going straight for the idols. He's going to take out the full health idol down here, and now he just needs to find a way, somehow, to finish off just one more idol. Can he do it before PewQ is able to anchor his defense on all these idols? He only needs to defend 3 now. He just needs to get some stuff up here to the top. When you're playing against an energy range deck, they have so many surprises with Machinated and Desperation and Bombard that you can't let, in this situation when you're already down 2 idols, you cannot let one idol go undefended because they can out of nowhere just end the game. So what we're going to see here is PewQ playing his creatures. They're already here in the middle, playing some stuff up here to the top to solidify that presence, but he is on 9 resources, so he can relatively easily do that. Oblivion Seeker is the choice, played up to the top in front. Could play something else behind as well. He chooses a Blightbearer, so that protects from a burn combo play, and moves to have 2 units on every idol. So very strong defensive play here, dealing a lot of damage to these units. 2 to the Elder, now it will perish to the Infectious Blight. Pops and goes over to the Gun Automaton. Magpieman sacrifices for scrolls, finds an Oculus Cannon. The piercing was exactly what won him his game 1 against Blinky. It was piercing damage that got through the Decay defense. Let's see if, or I'm sorry, the Order defense. Let's see if he can do it again. Has Cannonetta as well, Machinated in hand. Just needs to find one more combo piece to make it happen. Necrogeddon, though, for PewQ. We're going to see that come down, I think. Ilmire Tribesman. Well, maybe not the Necrogeddon yet. He's biding his time. Certainly didn't need to do it. It would have cleared the board and done a ton of damage, but he's going to play out the Watcher instead. Next turn is going to be the Necrogeddon turn, unless Magpieman pulls something perfect, and even Thunder Surge wouldn't do it. He needs a lot more than that. Has Piercing Projectile to make anything piercing, but he does Spark the Watcher, which allows him to kill it with the Gun Automaton, and critically plays an Overdrive on this Oculus Cannon. This is a really great combo. So this Oculus Cannon is now going to attack with Piercing every single turn. My concern, though, for Magpieman is this is a lot of combat damage coming in, and that Oculus Cannon is just going to die to these units. So he's going to need to find another way to get some piercing damage on the board. Harvester in hand, sacrifice for scrolls, finds another Harvester and a Bloodline Taint. PewQ's doing all this without any Harvester plays. He hasn't had them at the right time. Units positioning, Harvester comes down, still no Necrogeddon going to be played. No Bloodline Taint needed, just content to deal some idle damage and wipe Magpieman's board. 4 damage to the 4th idol, 2 damage to the bottom idol, 3 are now in Necrogeddon range, 4 are now in Necrogeddon range. The key is to have those on 9 health or less. Thunder Surge is great value here, but it's not going to be enough. It's a game-losing play for Magpieman, unfortunately. But he does not know PewQ has that Necrogeddon, and here it's going to come. That is enough. Magpieman sees the writing on the wall, says GG with a question mark, and now we're going to see GG with an exclamation point. It is absolutely game. Well done by both players. PewQ able to solidify the win based on the power of that turn 6 Halls of Umlasa. Even though he wasn't doing a ton at the time, having that advantage has cascaded throughout the game on 9 resources, 6 cards in hand, and tons of stuff on the board. Well done by PewQ. Let's see what Magpieman switches to in Game 2. See how he can counter this deck. This has been Smogan with the King of the Beta Tournament. Please check out the next round match. It's going to be a fun one. Thank you.